Welcome back to another episode of the Cycle Breakers podcast. I am so excited to welcome this week's guest to the show. I grew up in a hockey household, so this guest earned me quite a bit of clout with my dad, my brothers, my brother-in-law, and even my young nephew. So I'm excited to welcome Jordin Tootoo to the podcast. Jordin Tootoo is a Canadian former professional hockey player, notable as the first Inuk player in the NHL, known for his tough, energetic play with the Nashville Predators, Detroit Red Wings, New Jersey Devils, and Chicago Blackhawks. After a 13-year career, he retired in 2018 to focus on his advocacy for Indigenous communities, mental health, and addiction recovery, sharing his story through his best-selling book, All the Way, My Life on Ice, and his most recent book, Mind Over Matter. He co-founded the Team Tootoo Foundation with his wife, and he just recently released a documentary called Tootoo. So let's get into today's episode because I know it's going to be a really good one. Welcome back to another episode of the Cycle Breakers podcast. I am super excited to welcome today's guest, the one and only Jordin Tootoo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for having me. It's my honor and pleasure.
Oh, the honor's all mine. And I am sure many of our listeners are not going to need any introduction from you. They are probably well aware of who you are. Like I mentioned before we press record, I grew up in a hockey household. So when I dropped your name at the Christmas dinner table, everyone stopped what they were doing and were like, what? No way. So pretty cool to have you here on a number of different fronts. And I'd love for you, just for the sake of anyone who may not know who you are or may not be familiar with a bit of your backstory, can you introduce yourself in your own words and share where you're tuning in from today?
Right on. Yeah. So my name's Jordin Tootoo, originally from Rankin Inlet, Nunavut, which is a very remote community up in the northern parts of the Hudson Bay. Grew up your typical Indigenous family, lots of interesting events, to say the least. But I grew up in a home, both my parents were alcoholics, a lot of dysfunction, a lot of chaos. That being said, as an Indigenous background, the land is where I felt whole as an individual ever since I was a young kid. And I am truly grateful that my father taught us the way out on the land. But yeah, I became hockey became instilled in me ever since I was a young boy. My dad played hockey himself, and that led into me going on eventually to play in the National Hockey League for 14 years. And I became the first Inuk to lace them up in the National Hockey League. And here I am in retirement. I have a wife, Jennifer, 3 daughters who are all healthy. And we reside in Kelowna, British Columbia now. And I get to do fun stuff like this and have conversations, meaningful conversations. And just to hopefully show our people that it doesn't matter where you come from. We all fight a fight no one knows about. As a man myself, for many years, I thought my life experiences were far worse than anybody, and nobody can relate, nobody can understand. But as the conversations opened up those doors of vulnerability, it's only allowed me to really be the man I am today, and to lead by example, and to stop one cycle and start a new cycle. So that's basically me in a nutshell.
And then the episode ends here. I'm just kidding. No, that was great. And I have so much that I want to dig into and unpack from what you shared, but thank you for that introduction and just a little bit of context of your origin story, if you will. Something that I actually want to start with is, and you started there, was your relationship to spirituality and connection to the land, because I think that in the books that I've read of yours was really really formative for you. And then you've, gone on, and I'm sure you've traveled all sorts of really wonderful, fabulous places that maybe as a young boy from Rankin Inlet did not even think would be possible for you. And despite, your worldly adventures and where your career has taken you, both on the ice and off, how do you stay rooted to the land? And really, I guess maybe start with those early years where the land taught you so much.
Yeah, I mean, we as Indigenous people, I feel like we are in touch with ourselves when we are connected to nature. It is a place of hope for us. It throughout my journey. I can go back till when I was 4 or 5 years old, spending the weekends out on the land, and as the years went on, uh, the work ethic that was instilled and the survival instincts, of when you're out on the land, I need you to survive, and nothing comes easy out there. We as Indigenous people are connected to our ancestors when we're out on the land. It is a place of hope. It is a place of inspiration. Um, Throughout my sobriety journey, throughout my NHL career and being in the public eye, I've always felt that when I got out on the land, it was a place where the world just shut down, and the buzz and the chaos just became centered in regards to being still and listening to nature. That's where I felt after every year went by, and that through my NHL career, when I got out on the land, it revitalized my soul, and that's where we as Indigenous people feel most connected, feel most safe. We feel really comfortable and content in our own skin, because that's where we belong. And in today's society, with everything that's going on, screen time, social media, instant gratification, you don't necessarily get that when you're out in nature. Um, I often tell people, if you've never been out in the wildlife, just go for a walk. You know, go listen to your heartbeat. Go listen to every footstep that you make on the ground. It's a very humbling and neat experience when you're able to just sit there and listen to the trees and the wind blow, and the birds chirping. Um, it's about simplicity, and that's where I felt every year uh, I needed the land, not only for my sobriety, but for my healing journey. And it's been a tremendous place that has allowed me to reconnect spiritually, with our culture, with our traditions, and just having an open mind and an open heart, right? Like there's no judgment out there. It's you are one. And why can't it be like that in our communities, right? We often talk about how important the land is for our people, and that's where we connect, and that's where we become a community, because we know it's survival mode out there, right? And as soon as we get into the city or onto the reserves, it's like that backpack of yours just keeps getting filled up, and you know it's like a switch turns off, and then and you got all the grudges, the family history, and a lot of not understanding as a young teenager growing up in my community why I couldn't go to that side of town. Mom and dad saying, well, we don't go over there. And you know now in adulthood, when I ask questions, well, how come I wasn't allowed to go across town there? And it's all these little grudges that we carry, and it's just weight that weighs us down. um, and it's just you know it could be little things that eventually over the years become very heavy, right? um, And so I think nature, right? The strong survive and the weak wean out. And I just, I mean, that's a place where I go to when I need simplicity.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Jordan. I think that's just a beautiful reminder for all of us, whether you live in an urban center or you live in your home community or wherever you live, wherever in the world you are, connecting to the land and to nature. And I know for me, I went through a really rough couple years not long ago. I'm kind of just on the way out of it in the past year, and something that always there for me was the land and was nature. And I deeply resonate with that. So thank you for sharing. And so let's shift gears a little bit, but still, you know, reflecting on your humble beginnings in the North, and then becoming the first Inuk player to make it to the NHL. You know, we often hear that headline, but maybe not the journey that it took to get you there, unless you read the books, which I did. But you know, I think I love those journeys. I love hearing the inner workings of what that took for you, from like the internal lens, you know, to hold that dream and then to make it a reality. So, yeah, what wisdom or insight could you share about that? Because it's pretty remarkable.
I still wonder, like, how the heck did I ever make it to the National Hockey League? You know, a kid from Rankin Inlet, Nunavut. You know, the chances of any individual who aspires to be a professional athlete, you know, the chances are, you know, slim to none. You know, my humble beginnings started back when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and having my older brother Terrence, who is no longer with us today, but uh, he was the one that really inspired me to drive to be the best. You know, he was 3 years older than me, and little bro always wanted to hang out with big brother and all his brothers, and um, so I owe a lot to my brother and all his buddies growing up, because they were the ones that pushed me. Um, you know, I'm only 5'8", and people would often say, "Geez, Jordan, like, how do you go up against these guys who are 6'4", 6'5", 250 pounds?" And it all starts from childhood, right? For me personally, you know, the grind, the if you want something, you got to earn it. You got to dig through the trenches, you know. And in today's society, uh, you look at these young kids, you know, how can I get from A to B the quickest, fastest, easiest way? How are you supposed to learn? You know, I failure is part of life. And you know, the amount of times that I failed, the amount of times that I got cut from, you know, prep teams, and you know, said, no, you're not big enough, you're too small. Um, that just motivated me even more to prove. But I owe it to the community that I grew up in. You know, not so much on a daily basis being in survival mode, but learning mental toughness, right? We as Indigenous people have that on your average Southerner, right? Like we you know, mentally we have to grind to survive in our communities, and that was instilled in me since I was a young kid. And that whole journey for me, you know, grinding through the hard times, doing the hard work, doing it the hard way, failing multiple times, just kept motivating me to keep going. Right? You see, in today's society, if it's too hard, I don't even want to attempt to try whatever it is. You know, and I tell kids, you know, that the hell with it. You know, who gives a crap about what other people think or say or do? You know, this is your path. This is your story. Carve it out. You know. And then I get the old, well, Jordan, it's easy for you to talk about it, you know, looking back and all this. And And I just shake my head because it's especially a lot of men, we like to downplay our life experiences and the hardships. And by no means my life was easy, but I'm truly grateful for every experience that I went through because my parents raised us to the best of their knowledge. I love them more than I ever do today, because of now knowing their story. And but a lot of times our people are really quick to play the victim role, the poor me, uh, you know, find a easy way out just to quit and use racism as an out. And life's all about choices. Yeah, I was faced with a lot of shitty times, a lot of racism. But I knew deep down inside that I can't control what other people say or do towards me. All I can control are my actions, my work ethic, and eventually you'll get noticed, right? A lot of times we seem like we're irrelevant in today's society as an Indigenous person walking around town. Uh, forget forget about it. Stand tall. Be proud of who you are. You know, get yourself out there. Put yourself in uncomfortable situations, right? Because life, the real world, it's hard, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat. You know, my life was so easy and fun, and because I played in the National Hockey League and all this. No, that's real life experiences allows you to live your fullest life. And we just need to allow our people to accept failure, right? That's how we learn.
I thank you so much for just being so real, raw, transparent. We need a little bit of tough love sometimes. I'm very supportive of that because honestly, in reading, I actually read the books backwards. I read Mind Over Matter before All the Way, and then reading All the Way over Christmas, I was like, oh wow, like it painted the picture of all the hardship you went through and all the, I'm going to say, like a bit of the runaround on the journey to make it to the NHL, and then even when you were in the NHL, how many challenges you still faced. And I think the grit and the persistence that you're describing, and that shone through the book as well. I think that is such an important piece for younger generations, our youth, to know. And even, people in our age bracket that are maybe wanting to make changes for their life. Like, you have to persist in it, and you have to believe in something greater than yourself. And you are a living testament to that, because it's not, yeah, it's not a cakewalk. It's not handed to you on a silver platter. You worked so hard. And I think your work hard, play harder mentality really also shone through. And I want to get into that a little bit, because you're such a strong advocate now for, addiction recovery and your sobriety journey. But you've mentioned how growing up in a household surrounded by abuse and alcoholism, uh, yeah, impacted your life in many ways. How do you believe that also shaped your relationship to alcohol? Because here's the thing, like, while you were still rising to the top in your career professionally, you were for a period of time deep in alcoholism.
So I was in one.
Yeah, your time went on.
Yeah, I mean you know, as professional athletes, your average person or your average fan looks at professional athletes like we are invincible, we are Iron Man, and that, you know, how could we ever possibly have personal mental health issues when we are living our best life? And you know, we're human too, right? I know, the fans and look at us like we are put on this earth to fulfill their needs of whatever sport they love. That and being a hockey player, being an Indigenous hockey player, athlete, there's multiple layers of hardships that people don't see, and it's not only you know today, it's history. Your average Canadian is uneducated about what our people went through, right? In back back in the day, and the hardships and that intergenerational trauma being passed down through addiction, whether it's you know addiction, suicide, mental health. There's a lot of layers that you know I I personally experience as a teenager, as a young adolescent. There are many times where I would ask myself, like, why are my mom and dad like this? Why am I growing up scared? Like, no kid should grow up scared to be in their own home. And through my sobriety journey, being able to put pen to paper and to sit down and have meaningful conversations with mom and dad, uh, I started learning about their traumas and their life experiences, and it got to the point where there was many aha moments for me, in writing my book, also filming my documentary. A lot of things that I wasn't aware of, and now knowing what I know, I look at my parents and I feel sorry for them. I'm truly grateful for everything that I've experienced because it's allowed me to see life from a different perspective with clarity today, right? I didn't change my life to be better than any of my family. As Indigenous people, when you see a community member trying to change their life, we need to uplift them, right? We need to praise them. We need to uh, be proud of them rather than, we're quick to judge and we want to pull them back down to your level, right? I am who I am because we are. And that's the way I want to bring into our communities. I do what I do for you, not not for any personal gain. Obviously, for me internally, I want to make sure I'm healthy first, both physically, mentally. But it is you guys who keep me honest. It is my wife. It is my three daughters. Right? I chose because life's all about choices. Right? I'm choosing to do it the hard way, and I'm choosing to do it with clarity, being comfortable and content in my own skin. And as a man, coming from a remote community, a lot of us don't know what the word vulnerable means, right? Took me a lot of years in sobriety to understand what vulnerable means. Because I grew up in a home where men don't show weakness, men don't cry, men never surrender, tough love. But having three daughters now, it puts a different perspective on, what a true man, what a leader is in our home. I want to make sure that our home is a safe place for my girls to be raised in. I'm not doing it to be better than anybody else, right? A lot of our people will look at successful Indigenous people and say, "Oh, they're just lucky. Uh, why can't they help everybody else since they have all this? They're millionaires." And it's like, because they earned it. We need more of our people to go out and dig through the trenches rather than wish and play the poor me. It's all your fault, right? We're very quick to judge one another. The more you uplift a successful individual, I guarantee you that successful individual will want to help tenfold. But the more you drag them down, the more you play the poor me. I've been there, right? People look at me and say, "Well, you're a millionaire, Jordin. Why can't you, send this amount of money and help us out. And it's like, first you got to help yourself out. And if you're not willing to pick up your socks on your own, because nothing in this world is free.
Mhm. Thank you for that. Honestly, I feel like I'm a part of like this is medicine. This is so good. I deeply resonate. We've got to shift out of our victimhood. We've got to take ownership and accountability for our life. It doesn't mean you're at fault for the card you were dealt in life. As a young child, you didn't deserve, none of us deserves emotional abuse, emotional neglect, physical abuse, sexual, whatever it might be. That no one deserves that. But we must at some point make that choice, as you mentioned, to choose differently, to take good care of ourselves, because we can't pour from an empty cup. And reciprocity is a real thing, like what you put out in the world, whether it is abundant in nature or lack in nature, you will receive more of that. So like, what do you choose? And I just love that message. And I love, the way you're really speaking to anyone who, Indigenous or not, but I mean, a lot of the listeners here on the show are Indigenous, who are finding themselves stuck in victimhood. And don't get me wrong, like I'll be the first to admit, the past few years I was going through personal hardship. I was in victimhood for a bit and I had to pull myself out. We don't just get out once and then we're out for good. It's a continual choice we have to make. So, yeah, anything else you want to add to that?
It's the process, right? It's the one day at a time mentality, right? Like a lot of our people, I find, when changes need to be made, and if the change don't happen tomorrow, what do our people do? Throw our hands up in the air and say, "See, I knew it. I called it." We need to slow down. You need to take a few steps back and let the process unfold over time. Not one day, not 2 days, not a week, not a month. It may take years, but what are you doing? It, what are you doing individually to make that process start? Right? Like before I entered rehab, right? All I was thinking about was, well, I can't, how am I gonna last 30 days at a facility? Like, no way. Right. And here I am 15 years into sobriety. And, I tell people like it's a grind. It ain't easy, but you know, everyone wants instant gratification now. They want what Jordin Tootoo has. They want that life. How do I get that tomorrow? Sorry, bud. You got to start here. And nobody likes to start at the bottom of the barrel, right? But how are you supposed to grow a strong foundation?
Yeah.
Right? You got to start from the roots.
So you were just talking about, the sobriety journey, and you talk about once you entered rehab, you just knew you were done with drinking, which isn't always the case for folks. And what I'm wondering is, like, was there a moment, or maybe it was a series of moments, when you realized it was time to break the cycle? Or did it feel like it was, yeah, what was that like for you?
I think for every individual who deals with addiction issues or substance abuse, we all hit our rock bottoms in different ways and different forms. And for me, I first picked up a drink when I was about 12, 13 years old. And, at that age, I thought it was the greatest thing that ever existed. Um, I went on as a 14, 15, 16-year old, hanging out with, my brother and all his buddies. And so really my drinking days started to become prevalent when I was probably 15 years old, right? And then in the hockey culture back then, it was times were different, right? Booze was always prevalent, whether it was in the dressing room, you know, uh, it was always there. It was, it was part of being a junior hockey player, right? And so 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, my drinking really started to escalate when I was about 19 years old, 20 years old. When my brother took his life, I was 19 years old, and I just didn't know how to cope. I used alcohol to suppress my feelings. You know, I was doing my job at work. That anger, that really that style of hockey where people loved it, right? People loved watching Jordin Tootoo smash into guys and drop the gloves, but did Jordin Tootoo necessarily love what he was doing? No. But I knew that in order for me to keep living out my dreams, I had to keep doing that, which fueled, my alcoholism, right? I'd go get in a couple fights, knock a few guys out, and I'd be out at the bars after games, people, putting the spotlight on me and, all that attention. It definitely got to my head, and, I became selfish in a lot of ways. And then the first 5 years of my NHL career, I don't remember a lot, right? Because I didn't want to deal with my demons, and being called into coach's office multiple times because of my off ice antics started to really show. And it got to the point where Mr. Barry Trotz and David Poyle pulled me in for one last chat and basically gave me an ultimatum. And I knew in that meeting that in order for me to keep my brother's legacy on, and for me to really keep doing what I love in the game of hockey, I had to make significant changes in my life. And one thing for me was giving up alcohol, and I knew I had to make changes, or else I'd be the next victim, who's buried 6 feet under, and I didn't want that.
Yeah.
It was hard. It was hard, but the game of hockey allowed me the family, the brotherhood. For me, that's what kept me uh, digging in the trenches. For my teammates, and I just knew at that point in my life, I was 25, 26 years old, that I had to accept the help that was offered, and I I am truly grateful that I am where I am today, and I wouldn't have a beautiful family if I didn't make those changes. But here I am, a girl dad, married to a Sicilian, very strong-willed, and but I am truly grateful that I get to watch my daughters grow up. I am comfortable and content, and yeah, I didn't imagine seeing myself 15 years ago in this position, and I owe a lot of it to the people that believed in me, to my wife Jennifer. Although I didn't win the Stanley Cup, which is every NHL hockey player's dream, it don't matter, because I get to wake up every day and see 3 Stanley Cups walking out of their rooms, and I wouldn't change it for the world. That's I've gotten a lot of accolades and accomplishments and awards, but being a girl dad has been my ultimate prize and possession, and I I'm just grateful that my wife is just a tremendous mother to the girls, and keeps me on my toes. right? We all need a lady to straighten a man out. And
Yeah,
I love my wife Jennifer, and yeah, my girls. I just can't get enough of them. I love them.
that's beautiful. And I love, you know, from where you were and like continue to reference, you know, like in the trenches to be here, like this is what's possible, you know, like this is what's on the other side of the pain, whatever expression the pain is manifesting in one's life, whether it is the addiction, whether it is abuse, whether it is that victim mentality. You are living proof of what is possible when we heal. And my question about, you know, that anger fueled, um, you know, approach to your hockey style, which, yeah, was like the rough and tumble, like that is as part of what you were known for on the ice. But as you began your sobriety journey and your healing journey, did you find yourself kind of softening from that approach and no longer, because you weren't harboring that same anger within, it was starting to actually be healed and processed? Did you find that you just didn't have the fight in you like you once did?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you just kind of nailed it, right? I would say from the age of 15 years old till I was about 26, my hockey and my life in that 10 years was a whirlwind, and it was very chaotic. And my life became really fast. Like I just like it's like I woke up and 10 years have gone by. Um, it was very odd to me because early in my NHL career, although I was battling a lot of demons off the ice, I was being rewarded for my play. You know, the fans, coaching staff giving me opportunities, and yet, after games, I'd go and party and live a different life. And so I started playing the game of hockey with anger, um, with a lot of resentment and a lot of I don't care anymore. I don't care if my face gets smashed in. I don't care if I bust my knuckles up because I'm going to get rewarded, whether it's by the fans, by the hockey coaches. And it just started to really dawn on me towards the end that, I was mentally getting very tired. And, you know, people looked at or viewed Jordin Tootoo as this rambunctious Tasmanian devil kind of player. There's nothing stopping this guy. And because I didn't care anymore, you know. Um, I took a lot of things for granted. I took a lot of uh, mentorship for granted, whether it was through my teammates, through my coaches, opposing players. I started disrespecting myself, which led to not earning respect from my teammates or opponents, and started slowly noticing people kind of keeping their distance from me. Right towards the end of my heyday, and then I started finding myself in these dive bars, where you got local alcoholics who don't even know who I am. And I thought that was the greatest thing because I just want to be like everybody else. Here I am sitting in a dive bar in Nashville, Tennessee with 50, 60, 70-year-old individuals who've been sitting here for 50 years, right? And for me, the big moments having clarity probably took a year or two into my sobriety journey where I started telling myself I'm a hockey player first, not a fighter, right? And so I started to enjoy the game again, right? I didn't ever know if I was ever gonna lace him up again after I entered rehab, but I knew that I had to be okay with that, right? Because I had to fix myself first. And I went on to play another 6 more years in the NHL through sobriety. And it was probably some of the best times of my hockey career because, you know, I looked at the game first as I'm a hockey player, not a fighter. Prior to going into rehab, I knew I was going to fight, and it was scary, right? And the nerves and all that. But in sobriety, uh, if a fight broke out, it broke out. But I wasn't. That wasn't the first thing on my mind.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah, definitely the mindset of shifting to, you know, playing hockey first rather than, okay, who am I going to fight the first 10 years of my career, right? That's the mentality that I had, was like, I don't give a shit. I'm going hard because that's my job, and I'm going to get rewarded after the game, whether it's, getting VIP service at the bar or at the restaurant, all these little perks. And then in sobriety, just having clarity and playing the game like I was a kid again. And if a fight broke out.
yeah, more presence. It sounds like, in your sobriety journey, just wanting to be, and you could even see the shift in the way you were writing of, yeah, just this gratitude to still be able to play the game after, going through your sobriety journey and what it took to get there. Now, you've touched on this a couple times in the episode so far, and I know it's a big part of what inspired the book all the way. And that's the loss of your brother, and, how deeply that impacted your life and your career, and also, something so painful becoming a motivation for you to keep pushing forward. And I'd love for you to, touch on that piece, but then also speak to the beautiful work that you're now doing post NHL, this second career that you're having, the work you're doing to advocate for mental health and suicide prevention in Native communities, both on and off reserve. Yeah, like what messages would you want to share with those listening that need to hear it?
Yeah, I think, we all have mentors in our life. And and a lot of times mentors don't realize they're mentors for somebody else. Uh, Growing up, my brother, he didn't know through my eyes that he was, my father figure, my best friend, uh, my teacher. He was the guy that guided me. But to him, I was just his little brother. But my eyes, my lenses, I idolize this individual. And a lot of times in our remote communities, especially male figures, we don't carry a lot of inner confidence because of our past, right? A lot of us men, we carry a lot of shame and guilt because of our past actions. And as community members, when individuals are wanting to change their life and make significant changes, we have to allow those doors to be open, right? A lot of times we are quick to judge our own. Well, 20 years ago, like, why is he running for chief and council? Because 20 years ago, this, and this happened. And it's like, give your head a shake, man. People change. How are we supposed to evolve? And my brother always allowed me to accept failure, and that it's going to be okay, and that we all fight a fight no one knows about. Terrence was a guy who was a mediator in our family. He kept, the household in kind of order. Terrence was almost like a parent to my parents, but I didn't know why as a young kid, right? I know why now, but uh, so that being said, I think we all got to carry ourselves like we're mentors to the next generation, and a lot of times it's setting your pride and egos aside, especially men, right? Let your pride and egos down, right? A lot of us walk around town demanding respect, and Go out and earn it through your actions, right? Um, my brother was a leader through actions. He didn't say a lot, but when he did speak up, you listen, you understood, and I think we need more of our men in our communities to find that courage to stand tall. And as community members, we need to allow individuals to step into those unknown doors, right? Like, you want our people to become successful, we have to lend a helping hand, right? The judgment, the poor me, the victim role mentality, it's never worked for us, right? Why are we waiting for somebody else to get the job done? Go out and do it yourself, right? Like we've been waiting for decades for somebody else to fix the problem. Look yourself in the mirror because it starts within our own homes. And I'm truly grateful my brother was that mediator in our family because I got to be with him every day for my 19 years and learning because we as Indigenous people we learn by watching, right? I'm not a textbook learner, so are a lot of our people in our communities, right? Like, so we have to allow our actions to dictate how we want the next generation, right? All that being said, there's a lot of crazy things that happened in my life, but I'm accepting everything that happened in my past. Like I said, there's a lot of things I'm not proud of that I did, but I understand that people change, people evolve, right? When I hear people say, "Well, that's res life," no, that's a choice, right? You want a better life, you got to go out and earn it, right? Far too often I hear, "Well, that's how it is on the res," and this and that, and I call a spade, guys. Like, no, that's a choice. You want to live the res life, that's on you. Don't walk around town acting miserable because the world is not catering to you. Well, let me tell you, bud, the world owes you nothing. You know, you got to earn it. And it starts at home, right? And I think the more I talk, the more I share my journey to show men um, it's okay to show weakness, right? Being a tough guy, growing up in a home where I was taught men don't show weakness, men don't give up. It was very hard for me to accept the help that was offered. But here I am 15 years later, right? Being able to conversate, articulate my thoughts and put them to words, which I never knew how to do, right? But I accepted it and I accepted being coached. For many years, I thought I could do it on my own. It don't work like that. Reach out, ask for help, right? Three hardest words any man will ever say is, "I need help," right? Because of that pride and ego we carry, right? Our significant others don't deserve silence anymore, right? Many of us grew up in homes where you don't ask questions, you don't talk, you don't go there. People evolve, people mature. And in order for us to mature, especially men, we have to hold space for our significant others and be able to communicate and um, learn to be vulnerable, right? For men to feel love, we demand respect. And for women to feel respected, they demand love. Well, a lot of us men, we don't know what love and affection is because we never experienced it, right? My wife's Sicilian, she wants physical touch and all this. And I'm like, okay, I'm still learning here, 10, 12 years into our marriage, like, but that being said, we all grow up in we have different childhoods, right? I I never seen my dad kiss my mom, hold my mom's hand, conversate at the dinner table, you know. His old school ways. And then you have, my wife's Italian, everyone's all physical touch and lovey-dovey. And, I'm just like, whoa, what's going on here? But, I think you have to allow space for one another.
I think that's a beautiful message. I think for men, especially, Indigenous or not, there is, I think this conversation is so, so needed, that vulnerability is not a weakness, that your emotional needs matter, that your emotions matter, that you matter. And, if this message can reach even one person, and I know it'll reach more than one, but, just that ripple effect of that message from a man who has, made choice after choice after choice to get to where you are today. Like, it is possible. And, I think we can't emphasize that enough, that who you were, because like you, I have a wild party past. I got a really crazy past, but that is not me anymore. I've had to do a lot of growing, a lot of maturing, a lot of healing to become who I am today. That past does not define me. And for a number of years, that shame ate me alive. But in the healing process, you reconcile. And so I love that you've touched on that several times too, because we can change. And who we were at one point in our life is not who we are forever.
Yeah. And I mean, it's very prevalent in our remote communities on the reserves, right? Like I mentioned earlier, right? That was the old Jordin Tootoo, right? And if an individual is going to continuously refer to the old Jordin, I look at that individual like, wow, I wish I wish you can receive help that, will have better clarity and understanding, right? Like, because I would always take that personal, right? Well, and then I try and prove and talk my way out of it, uh, and explain. But at the end of the day, like I said, we all fight a fight no one knows about. And when you have individuals who constantly play the poor me, it's time to put in some work. It's time to put pen to paper. It's time to reflect, because the world owes you nothing until you look yourself in the mirror and you pull up your socks. And, I don't give a shit if people are going to say, well, Jordin, it's easy for you to say that. Well, no, fuck it. I had to dig through the trenches too, and, we say tough love. Yeah, there's tough love to a certain point, but also have an understanding of having meaningful conversations, right? A lot of us men, we don't want to hear it, right? But do our significant others deserve the silence? I seen my mom in pain, right, through silence, uh, and my wife doesn't deserve that, right? And don't come to me and say, well, you think you're better than us because you got all this help, or you go to therapy, like and I still get it. And I feel sorry for those individuals who go there, right? Because they're struggling themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's important. It's like hurt people, and unfortunately that's the case. But also, healed people can heal people, and that's what you're doing, Jordin. I think that's what is so special about your message, your mission now, is that you have healed. You've dug through the trenches, and those are some deep trenches you've dug through to be.
And I'm still healing, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's a never ending quest. Like, people, like, people want to be fixed tomorrow, and they think, life's gonna be great. And it's like, well, it's every day, buddy. Like, uh, I'm just better able to manage my mental state, through those hard times where, whether when childhood trauma, creeps in, or, triggers, like, I'm able to just assess, move back, take a few breaths. Whereas a lot of our people who are in one, you see in public places people losing their shit, and and far often we're quick to judge and say, well, that person messed up, stay clear of them, or rather than for me now having a different perspective and saying, wow, like I wonder what they're going through, because it's not that exact moment that has made them erupt. It's layers, right? Layers.
Yeah.
And I'm still peeling back those layers.
Yeah, it is lifelong, and I agree. We're forever on a journey. It just gets a little I'm gonna say a little easier to navigate. Not always easier, but I know we're wrapping up in time, and I want to be really mindful of that. And I want to just very briefly touch on like this beautiful work that you are now doing. And I know you have this documentary that recently came out. And so, yeah, what is it that's really lighting the fire within you with your work these days? Where can we find some of this work? If anyone wants to book you for an engagement, like how can they begin that process?
Yeah, so obviously hockey has given me a lot of great opportunities, and it was one aspect of my life, and today, I get to travel across Canada and share um, my life experiences and the journey that I've gone through and how I've overcome a lot of adversities, and because, like I said, we need more of our people sharing their stories and finding that courage to speak up. And I am truly grateful that hockey has given me a platform, right? And now I'm able to travel across Canada and bring awareness to suicide, to mental health, to substance abuse. Uh, I feel that what I do today has exceeded any of the my past accolades that I've received through hockey, because I feel that this is going to save lives, and it's going to bring people together and to say, hey, like I need you to overcome, because it takes a community, it takes a village to make things move and to shift things. And I'm just grateful that I have this platform to share through my books. Also, just finishing up my documentary that's gone live. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not tech savvy at all. I think it's on Super Channel or Amazon or whatever. But if yeah, I do public speaking now. Go out, travel, whether it's community, corporate events. I'm through Speaker Spotlight, their agency out of Toronto, or you can go to my website, jordintootoo.com, or check me out on social media. I'm not a social media guru by any means, but the contact info is on there. And I'd much rather be in my garage wrenching on my first generation Broncos that I rebuilt. So I got to get back in there and get to my 68.
That's awesome. And I'll link all of that in the show notes so people can easily quickly find you.
If there's any Ford Bronco lovers out there, hit me up. First gen 66 to 77. I'm looking for a body.
If anyone in the cycle breakers community can help a brother out, guys, come together for you. I love that. The final question I ask everyone is, what does it mean to you to be a cycle breaker?
For me personally, I think it's blazing your own path and to open up those communication lines for the next generation, and to show my girls, my three daughters, that you know life is hard, but it's also rewarding if you overcome adversities through community, through family, because at the end of the day, family is the most important thing. What is in your home? Um, you know, my girls, I want them to be able to be free and just go and be a kid and enjoy life, and that's what my home is all about.
I love that. Jordin, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your knowledge, and your stories today. I am so grateful that you have taken time out of your wrenching bronco or whatever. What did you call it? Wrenching some broncos. Well, I'm grateful you could take some time out of your schedule to connect with us today. So we say Chimigwech and Bamapi.